All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Gentleman's Atlas podcast. Back again with you with a special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, I had the pleasure of meeting this guest at a live show down in Atlanta. When I tell you, his smile lit up the entire room, the energy was there from the beginning. I am not lying. In fact, I'm probably underestimating it. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring someone on the podcast who his content is all positivity. It's bringing to you what it can mean to live in a positive light, to shine in a world filled with negativity, to find your inner purpose, to find healthy masculinity within yourself and grow as an individual. So without further ado, let me bring to you the one, the only, Sir Amazing. Welcome to the show.
Oh man, Isaac, thank you so much for having me. Shout out to everybody listening on the Gentleman's Atlas podcast. Super excited to be here. Thankful for the opportunity to speak, and I'm ready to get the show on the road.
That's what I love to hear. So again, like I said, this is going to be relaxed. We're just talking, and it's all about providing value in the ways we see fit of conversation. So I think a good starting point again is there's a topic to be had about healthy masculinity, about accepting this positive light and accepting that being a man isn't hiding from your emotions, hiding what you're feeling from. It's accepting all these as part of who you are and as a core being. So I want to get a little bit of your experience and your insight on what it is to live in healthy masculinity.
There's a definition that I've came across over the last few years to me that epitomizes healthy masculinity as it's being strong enough to be gentle.
I like that. I really do. There's a saying that kind of talks about, a good man is a dangerous man. He's capable of different things, but he chooses to keep it under control. He chooses to keep power under his influence, under his control. And I think that's key because, again, that's one of the things, like people confuse showing weakness with showing vulnerability. And it's like, no, you're courageous to show vulnerability. You're courageous to show who you are and how you're feeling. And so that idea of, being gentle and choosing to be gentle and not being forced upon or having it forced upon, I think is huge. So for you, what has shown in your life? How has healthy masculinity affected your life personally?
Oh, man. I mean, to me, it's a few things that come to mind in our modern era. So we are closing in on, it's right around 2 years since that Chicago Bulls documentary dropped, right? And in there, we see Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest athlete of all time, top 3 greatest athletes in American history for sure. We see how he interacts with his teammates. We see that behind the scenes. To me, it was just authenticity of who Michael Jordan was and what he represented, right? And in the PC era that we live in, someone could easily say, oh, Michael Jordan was a tyrant, or he was mean, or he was rude. And I say, no, that is healthy masculinity. Here's why. Michael Jordan might fight his teammates. He would ride his teammates. He'd get in your face. But Michael Jordan was crying on the floor when he won his championships. So it wasn't because he was being a mean guy. His heart was in it that much. And one of the things he said in that documentary was, you can ask any of my teammates. I never told them to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. So to me, I see leadership in that. I see putting your all into that. And to me, that's one of the most healthy forms of healthy masculinity. But then I'm going to look at it from another side as well. You can't see, you might not be able to see this, but this is Bron. Bron's my favorite athlete of all time.
Okay.
In fact, the Lakers this year, the reason why they're not in the playoffs, because to me, this is his worst season as a leader. This is his worst season as a leader. Because in the past, his leadership has shown that's why a team that was predicted to underachieve has overachieved so many times throughout his career. His healthy masculinity is, unlike the introverted middle child, Michael Jordan, he's the extroverted only child whose leadership is going to come through camaraderie. And his healthy masculinity is going to be demonstrated through, hey, you just came into the league. You could call my phone. You could work out with me. You could ask me any questions. Hey, you're my teammates. I got the biggest house on the team. Everybody could come to my house. We're going to watch a movie together. We're going to talk about this. We're going to have this group chats. That's also a way of healthy masculinity. So to me, healthy masculinity is being able to be as ruthless and aggressive when need be, like a Michael Jordan or a Diddy. And you may not, this may be a little bit old for you, but Diddy on Making the Band was a show early 2000s. He was ruthless, but there's a reason. There was always a method behind that ruthless. Sometimes it's necessary to do that, but not everyone leads in that way. So it's times to be that Michael Jordan, that lion, and it's times to be the one who can understand. I have to speak to this entire group differently. How I talk to Isaac and how I lead Isaac as an example is different than I might lead my little brother or a child, a young boy. You know, think of the movie He Got Game, right? Where it's like, oh my gosh, he was pushing his son. He was pushing Jesus so much. Yeah, he was pushing him because he made him that great of a player. And that's why at the end of the movie, you see, even though he kind of despises his dad for the fact that his mother is gone, there's the ultimate level of respect because he understood my dad had to do this for me in order for me to be the man that I am. And to me, that is just a few cultural examples that I think of when I think of healthy masculinity.
No, there's a lot to break down, and that's all really good stuff. It's interesting to me because I've seen this perspective recently where it's like it's often defined by the individual, right? Not every individual expresses their masculinity in a similar manner, and often it's not. That's kind of how we have our own personality traits. And again, the way you express it's different than I express it. And I thought something that I was found interesting as I listened to a podcast interview. I think it was Mike Rashid talking on, and he talked about like the high value man, how he thought that concept was just weird. And he is like, you tell me who I am. Who am I to you? And it's this idea for me that it's like, you have an image of yourself and you have certain traits that you portray, but it's almost, again, an adaptability of who you are, right? There's different attributes that you show at times. Sometimes you do need to be that go-getter and be aggressive, be dangerous, be ruthless. And other times you need to be receptive. You need to be listening. You need to be growing, right? And there's aspects to be had for all men. In terms of like, you don't know everything. Sometimes you need to learn. If someone's advising you, someone's giving you criticism, you need to be quiet, listen, get what's good from it, separate the message from the messenger, and start to grow from it. And there's other times where you need to deliver, where it's time for you to step up, to take the burden, and really put yourself in a place where you're claiming responsibility and claiming accountability. And I think one of the biggest things that I see in these high-level athletes and other times a lot of people living in healthy masculinity is accountability, right? You can't demand from others if you're not demanding for yourself, because that's just complaining. That's just blaming something else, right? You have to take responsibility for yourself and then want it from others as well. Because if you don't understand what it means to take accountability for your own life, what does that mean for other people? So,
absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Break it down.
And, in the sports realm, one of the things that I used to be a fan of Russell Westbrook. Over the last few years, my appreciation for his game decreased just from a basketball cerebral aspect. What I really, really didn't like this last season from Russell Westbrook was I'm like, hey, you've always been rude to reporters. You've been one of the most rude athletes when it comes to interviews. And I have a bachelor's degree in journalism and mass communication. So my appreciation to someone who's willing to ask you questions about your life and your livelihood, and you having such an aggressive tone and manner consistently throughout years. I can YouTube and pull up plenty of times where you've spazzed on reporters for asking you questions about the game that you play, the game that you chose to play that pays you well so that you can do everything for your city and your community. For you to have an attitude with them, and then when your performance shows you're playing awful, you have no accountability and say, well, it's the coach. Oh, well, I didn't get a fair chance. Well, I don't take this home with me. Or I don't want my kids to come to the game because I don't want people to call me. You're playing awful. You're playing terrible. Own it. That's accountability. Own it. Hey, you know what? We were supposed to be competing for a championship this year. I did not play like a championship level point guard. My history speaks for itself, but I know there's a part missing. There's no accountability in that. And he tried to choose the victim route. And I'm not even attacking Russ. It's just something that resonates with me around playoff time where that matters. That's what separates a champion, whether it's actually the guy who wins the championship or the guy who's winning the championship daily in life. And that, to me, in this world, and one of the things that I remember the first time I heard Stefan speak live, this is a first-time event, and he talked about the level of testosterone in men in our modern era. And when you start speaking from that victim mentality, it's showing a high level of testosterone deficiency. And for me, I grew up, my parents got divorced when I was 4 years old. So I grew up in a single-parent home. I'm Aimé Mukini Jr., a.k.a. Sir Amazing. Relationship with my father has gotten better in my 20s than it was when I was a kid. But I grew up in a single-parent home. I know how easy it is to be a victim. It's just based off the nature of the beast of feminine energy. It's just the nature of the beast. You have to have men or that man that's going to lead you in the way of how you, not the right way, because I don't want to use that type of term, but in a way that's most effective and efficient for who you are and what your goals are. And that's just a prime example to me of how so many of us, right? I own it. I think we forget, and this is one of the things I wish people would say more. Just because you're born female does not make you a woman. And just because you're born male does not make you a man. There are steps within yourself, because we all know when we look in the mirror, we all know the reality of who we are and what we do. We know the dark, the light, we know the good, the bad, we know everything. And we could step out into the real world and make it seem like, oh, well, I'm this and I'm that. But the reality of it is you know. And if you don't know, part of the not knowing is being aware enough to know, okay, there's a gap that I need to learn about.
There's also an essence of choosing not to know who you are and not wanting to. And that's a big problem a lot of people have, man. The mirror does not lie. I call it the accountability mirror, man. You got to look in the mirror and you got to be honest with yourself. And here's the thing. You can lie to others. You can lie even to your family, to the world even. But if you're lying to yourself, is that a life you want to lead? Is that a life you want to leave behind? You want to look back and be like, I lived something that wasn't authentic because I was afraid of what maybe I could do, what I could have been, right? And for me, like, I'm thankful enough to grow into a family that was strong, right? My parents were strong together. But my parents come from an immigrant background. Right. They came to this country from Colombia, from South America, with a suitcase full of clothes. That's all they had. Right. And they made a living for themselves by working. They spent their time in a full-time job and studying English because maybe one day they could create a life for themselves and for a kid, for kids here. And I'm an only child. Right. So for them, everything was in investing into a better life for them. My entire ancestry is indigenous Colombian. Right. There's no one else in this family that has come to the States. Right. I'm the first person in my family to be born here. And so for me, there's a lot of ways to be grateful and there's a lot of ways to take advantage of the opportunity. And then growing up, I did to a certain extent. I was smart. I did good in school. I played sports, but I was never fully there. I was never fully invested in becoming a better individual for myself, for my family, and for society in that part. And it wasn't until I made a decision, and it was especially during COVID, that I changed completely. And ever since that day, I've always been scared of complacency because I know I can demand better for myself and I know I can do better for others and I can inspire others and I can motivate others and I can change the lives of people across the globe if I do the work that's necessary. And so I think that what we have to understand is that we all come from different backgrounds and we're all our own people. But until we understand the kind of people that we are, the kind of person that we are, we can't begin to create change in our own world. We can't begin to think that the world can change because of us if we do not yet understand us. Because the reality is your impact is measured by how well you know yourself and then how well you can market that known self. And I think that's something that I've seen a lot in you. And it's one of the reasons that it was really nice to meet you in Atlanta because I saw like that tagline even like the world's most marketable influencer. Like for me, you found your area, you found the way you go and you're authentic. And I want to segue this into like this idea that these conversations are so important, especially when you're willing to be authentic, you're willing to risk being confrontational to a sense and disagree because it's not about agreeing. It's not about coming to the same conclusion. It's about providing value in both sense. Like I remember seeing a post, man. I think Jose was on the Roommates podcast, and Jose mentioned something about a real man being able to support a family and children. And I think you commented something like, so Jesus wasn't a real man. And it was like, you weren't disrespecting what he was saying, but you were offering a perspective. You were like, what? Well, does this mean that? And so I think that's really important, because I was like, whether or not I agree with you doesn't matter. The fact that there's a conversation to be had and you're creating that conversation, that's so important.
Man, I appreciate you pointing that out, because I saw that, and we're connected because of the Roommates, and I'm a huge fan of the podcast. And when I saw that post, I'm just like, and there's something that happened it was discussed at the event. There was a gentleman who asked, he was from the UK, and he asked the question.
The London guy, yeah.
V's went, and he said, well, my generation has to last, and boom, and that's true. And my reality is that could be 1,000% true, and a man does not have to recreate, and that could be 1,000% true as well. Because I just use those examples. When the question of and the topic of marriage and all these things come, I said, okay, listen, Jesus had 0 wives, and Solomon had 1,000 women. And you say, I'm supposed to have one because that's the reality that you've created for yourself. Just think about that for a second. People don't like to hear those things. Well, what does that mean? Well, how could you boom, boom, boom? Well, if you want to do this, then you have to. Okay, so then do it. If that's why I don't always agree with the way he says it, but I do think Kevin Samuels is right very often. When you put yourself in a position to be that, if that's what you really want to put yourself in a position to do, it's possible. It might be a challenge, but guess what? It's going to be a challenge whether you have one wife, no wife, one kid, 8. Life is going to be challenging no matter what. That's part of the cycle that we're in. You choose your challenge. And I just want to debunk the idea that because I see something differently means it has to be different for everyone, because the survey says that in all the research, man, you can research Joseph Campbell, Friedrich Nietzsche, Leo Tolstoy. These are historical authors, writers who have philosophers who studied. One of the things you talked about is Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius. These are all different reflections of experience. And at the end of the day, you have to live your own experience. And I can't tell you, but I don't want to use the word can't. I won't tell you what your experience is supposed to be like, just like you wouldn't tell me that. We have to experience it ourselves. And I think it's very important to be, like you said, when it comes to the confrontational aspect, like I don't fear confrontation. Maybe it's because I'm an Aquarius. I get a little bit of a rise off of telling someone I disagree. Prove to me why I should agree with you. Like what? Who told you that? Like that's my theory. Is like, who told you? How, somebody says, well, a narcissist says. That's a whole nother thing. We could say that for later. But to me, it's one of the greatest lines of the year. But I just think it's important for us to get to that point. Like, and you bring that up. So there was a post I saw. Cam Newton said, and I read the article. I didn't read the headline. Remember, I said I have a bachelor's degree in journalism and mass communications. The reason why I don't work in news now is because I don't like the way news is spread. Right. I was in news. I could have been a news reporter if I wanted to, fresh out of college. And I said, I'm not going to dictate the pulse of culture through that lens. I refuse to. Even if that means I have to hit my head on the wall and do all the bleeding that comes with that, I refuse to. I have to look myself in the mirror. But the post was about Cam Newton saying that he said a woman should cater to a man and be quiet. So people, oh my gosh, this is misogynistic. No, it's not. Because when you actually read what he says, men, we have to do better too. So if a man, I'm a firm believer in, this is a book the Roommates has talked about. I have a list of books specifically for men that I believe every man should read. And one of the books is The Way of a Superior Man.
That's a fantastic book. David, what's his last name?
David Didas. Literally, I literally have it right here. It's literally right here. It's not a coincidence at all either.
Not a coincidence, man.
So when I think about that aspect, when you are operating as a superior man, when you can make a statement, say a woman should cater to me, because you're not going to force her to. It's not a forceful thing. It's not a you do this, you do that. No, because when you're operating from a frequency as a superior man, the way you treat her, she's going to want to give that to you.
Exactly.
It's not a force. And I think so many times we live in an era that's just like quick emotional reaction. Understand what he's really saying. If I, as a man, am taking care of you and loving you, and that taking care of does not always mean specifically financially.
Right.
That means loving her and her love language, whether that's acts of service, gifts, physical touch, words of affirmation, whatever that love language is. If I'm being the highest version of myself while loving her at the highest level of what she needs for love, she's going to cater to me. She's going to be quiet. There's not going to be a fight. We live in an era of I've come across from one, I'm an alpha female. You can tell me everything that you've done, and I'm going to say that's great. Understand, when you tell me and you speak from that masculine tone of the things that you accomplish and you're reading your resume off to me, how I'm viewing you as a man is we can be friends. I'll be an asset to you. I don't care how beautiful you are. I don't care how sexy you are. That's not what makes
it's an energy that makes it more of a friendly energy, right? You're like, I'll co-worker. Yeah, be my business partner. Like, no.
Cool. Wait, we can listen. I'll be on the gram. I'll show love. I'll tell you you're beautiful. But there's going to be a barrier because you, at some point in time, you feel like, and it's interesting. I watched the Kevin Samuels Shan Boody interaction, and to see the two opposites of it, where she's like, oh, well, I wouldn't. My audience are women that want to walk in purpose and this and that, which is fine. I just want to say all these women who talk about walking in purpose, I want to see y'all talk about Oprah. Oprah's a billionaire. Oprah's a GOAT. Oprah's a legend. Oprah has no children. She walks in her purpose fully. Let's be real. Let's have that conversation. All these women who talk about all these things, let's talk about it. Did Harriet Tubman have children? Let's talk about that. Let's be real. Let's be honest. So yes, it's great. I'm never going to discourage my little sister or any of my nieces from being the best version of themselves. But to be honest and really look at the picture for what it is and what our history says without having to drill a lack of value in the fact that, guess what? Survey says most men would love to have a woman rub their shoulders as opposed to pay for their dinner.
Man, no, it's my biggest thing is like there's so much to go in there, and I want to start with the point that it's like here's the problem that I see the biggest. Whether or not you think someone else may be right or have a point or not, you got to be able to listen. Like if you're going to like someone says something and instantly you're like misogyny, the patriarch, it's tyranny. Like I'm sorry, but like to be honest, there's no listening going on and you're not really taking it. It's like it's not even a personal attack anymore. Like for me it's like whether or not you agree, that doesn't matter, but if you're not listening, you're harming yourself because you're closing yourself off to new beliefs, to limiting beliefs. And so for me, it's like both sides, like don't rule them out because of the general or the norm. Don't rule them out, for men. Like there's very good women out there, very feminine women that will make your life better, right? They're not all for the streets. They're not all doing these things. Like, no, that's not like, why are you blaming them and blaming all women if it's only a select few that are being spotlighted? And on the vice versa, like, men that are going after what they want and they're ambitious and they're succeeding in life, they have a standard. Why? Because they understand that it's a commitment. It's a time bond. So why are they going to put themselves through a stressful relationship that they're not feeling fulfilled in, right? So there's an understanding to be had. And I think there's a part too where, again, going back to that, you're not being honest with yourself. In that book, In the Way of the Superior Man, he talks about it. Most women have a feminine essence. They're happier by a fulfillment of sense of love. And men are more fulfilled by the sense of purpose. So it's like, maybe you are a woman that's more fulfilled in purpose. Cool. You do you. But that doesn't mean you're imposing this on other people. Just like for men, it's not the same thing, right? You have to bring it as it is. You have to be able to have intellectual conversations and dissociate. Okay, Sir Amazing said, that's a different way to look at it. Maybe you shouldn't look at it that way. And I'm like, okay, he's not coming after me. He's asking me to think about it from a different perspective. That's all he's asking. He's not saying you're lesser than me. He's not saying you have less value than me. No, he's just saying, take a second, pause, relax, take a look at it from my angle. Boom. Your vision goes from this to that. right? That's how you grow as an individual. You can't grow if you're learning from the same stream of information.
Listen, Baby Keem said, put down your IG and look through my lens. And me and to grandma, who did I offend? Like, I just like that's it, man. I have posted, me and my team have posted on my page a tweet. The highest compliment a man can pay a woman is to marry her. And I've gotten women just jumping down my throat every time. No, it's respect. I'm like, time out. If you marry someone who doesn't respect you, that's a you issue. Because if you say yes to a man who proposes to you, who doesn't respect you, you don't respect you. How could you honestly say you respect yourself? Like, how could that be the bottom of the barrel? Oh, well, respect is, to me, that's a given. That's a given. My question, and I've said to a woman, well, she'll share something and I'll be like, okay, so when a thief breaks into the house, do I look at you to get the gun? Just be real. Because all I'm saying is people want to talk all this. I'm like, listen, just keep it 1,000. Like, this is not what the reality of it is. And I think now there are some men and my reality is, look, there are some men, because one thing the Way of Superior Man does say, he says when a woman does walk more in her masculine, she needs a man who walks more in his feminine. Hey, you want to be a stay-at-home dad? That's fine. I've had, associates, friends in the past from high school say, hey, my girl makes $200K, we make $200K. I say, not me. I'd rather have somebody says, well, that's ego. He should be humble. I said, that's cool. That's what it means to you. To me, my standard for myself is, like I use the example at the event. I said, hey, I don't want a woman that's out here twerking on her Instagram story in a bottle section. I'm also a guy who tucks in his polo. So I understand, like, this is how I'm going to operate. Does that mean I'm a Russell Wilson? No, because I wouldn't be Russell Wilson. If you gave me the option of career paths and lifestyle between Russell and Future, I choose Future every single time. I don't care what anybody says. That's my reality. But at the same time, I also have a standard that I hold for myself. If I don't drink, I don't smoke hookah, I find no pleasure in those things. That doesn't mean a woman who does those things is less than me. It just means this is a standard I hold for my own body, for my own sanctuary. I prefer to feed my brain and my body with things that are going to make me a better man, a better lover, a better son, a better brother, a better leader, as opposed to other things. But I also accept the fact that based off your industry, if you are a rap artist, music, period, if you're in the film industry, guess what? It might be a little bit unrealistic in some capacities to not indulge in those things. And if that's what help, and to me, that's the definition of healthy masculinity. It's really being true to yourself. Man, I'm being very, very honest and open, and I love it because these are some of the things that really cross my mind and that I just keep to myself as I observe how our world is moving. It's like I had a conversation with one of my best friends about the Cam Newton situation. And he's like, well, Cam did this and Cam. I said, okay. That doesn't just, preachers who preach on certain subjects, they actually struggle with the subject they're preaching about. That's why they're preaching about it. That's kind of how this thing goes, right? Like I wouldn't be hyper focused on it if it wasn't something that I was dealing with. And I think it's a challenge for people to disassociate it because it's like debunk the idea of perfection, like get rid of it. We all want to be the best. If you don't want to be the best, you don't wake up in the morning. Everybody who wakes up in the morning, you want to do something better than you did it yesterday. Even a person at the lowest of their life, they want to feel better than what they feel at that low. So when you really accept that and understand it, then it's okay. I don't have to look at everything as just an absolute great box. And a book that I'm going to recommend that you check out and look into is Joseph Campbell, Hero with 1,000 Faces. This is a book that kind of debunks the idea of it goes into how all these different cultures around the world have the same spiritual story. They have the same spiritual story, just differently. It's based on their environment. Some places where there's no water, they're not going to associate greatness with water because that's the environment. That's how the landscape was. And in certain countries, a thumbs up can be offensive. We here, a thumbs up is good job. Great. hey, thumbs up. Somewhere else in the world, this is disrespectful. Does that mean that thumbs up is bad? Or does that mean that the place where the thumbs up is disrespectful? No, it means things are different. And to me, that's humility and understanding, appreciating the differences that are still connected to us as not even a society, a universe, as beings.
No, there's a lot to unpack, but I want to start with this. Yeah, like it's just so like you get so passionate about these things sometimes that like you just want to like see some things happen. You want to help people, but you got to understand, like, again, it comes back all to this limited mindset. If you're not willing to open yourself up and realize that people are going to approach things from so many different perspectives, you will always fail, because you will fail to understand that not everyone sees the things similar as you. And no, like you said, again, it's relative, right? Signs are relative. Thinking is relative. Happiness is relative to the individual. And I feel like what people have to understand nowadays is that our world in the last century advanced more than any of us could ever imagine. And while it's a blessing, a lot of us have lost ourselves, and we've lost ourselves not only as individuals, but as a society and as different cultures. So what happens now? Right now is the time to rebuild in this new era, to build and find who we are, and who we were meant to be, and walk in that light. That's why there's a sense of fulfillment from walking in a purpose from a man. That's why there's just a sense of fulfillment for a woman to feel that strong love in a family, because we're wired that way. And to think that in 50, 60 years, that just completely flipped from thousands of tens of thousands of years of human history has no basis, because we have to understand that while we may have changed, our archaic desires are still very similar. And we have to realize that some of the reward systems, like dopamine, have been messed up because of the given era. And like you say, I don't chase stuff like this pleasure. I don't chase the drugs. I don't do all this stuff because you're trying to be healthy for yourself, right? And there's a real aspect to that, in the sense that we get dopamine from achievement, of getting things done, of building things, right? There's no greater happiness for a man then there is that. When you look back and you see things that you've built, but when you're in the process of building things, when you're working and you figure something out, boom, you get a rush of dopamine because you feel it. Man, there's a I don't know if you ever heard, it's called the flow state.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Mihaly something.
Say his name. Yo, his name is, yes, absolutely no.
He's a Polish psychologist.
Yep.
I think he wrote the book Flow 30 years ago. And let me just break this down for the people. Imagine the best state of mind that you could ever imagine. Imagine taking the productivity gurus, whatever you could do most, times 1,000, right? The actual results show you're about 456% more effective, more productive when you're in flow state. Athletes call it in the zone. Why? Because you're in tune. The right and the left hemispheres of the brain are in sync, and you are locked in. You are focused. Where does that come from? From chasing real success, from chasing excellence. You're not trying to be perfect. You're striving for excellence. What is excellence? It's expanding your mind. It's willing to make mistakes, but it's a fear of being stagnant. It's a fear of being not progressing from who you were yesterday, right? And that's, for me, that's my biggest driver. I'm not out here thinking I'm the best. I'm not out here thinking that I'm perfect, but I know I am proud, I am confident of what I was and what I am and what I will become, because I'm not stopping, because I know that I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to go to sleep. There's no one that would discourage me. There's not anything anyone could say. There's not anything that could happen other than my death that's going to stop me from getting where I want to be. And why is that? Because I'm going to look back, and I don't care if I missed out on experiences or missed out on pleasure or missed out on whatever. As long as I can look back on my life, the day that day comes, whether it's tomorrow, next week, next year, 10 years, 20, 40 years, I don't care. I don't want to look back and say I was stagnant. I didn't pursue excellence. I didn't pursue a better me, whatever that means. If that means career, financially, mentally, spiritually, family, I don't care. But when that day comes, I will look back and say, I gave it what I needed to give it. I was what I needed to be when I needed to be it. Because for me, it's all about what you can control. That's who you are. The aspects that you can control, right? You got to be proactive, and you got to understand that while they're out of your control, they are your responsibility. And that's huge. It's huge to understand that.
What you just broke down, and I love the way you broke it down, is that's what the Mamba mentality is. I remember when I saw on Twitter, shout out to Woj, that's a mentor of mine, former mentor from back in college. When I saw Woj tweet, and Kobe Bryant passed away, I remember I cried. And I cried not because I was a fan of Kobe Bryant, the basketball player. Like, I grew up watching Kobe. I was an Allen Iverson fan before LeBron. I'm like, man, give AI Shaq. Give AI Shaq, see what he do. He gonna win 3 championships too. What y'all talking about a Kobe to me for? Nobody wants to play with Kobe. Kobe will shoot the ball if you wide open. But what I love about Kobe Bryant, and I've been able to discover even more in his absence, is Kobe Bryant is the definition of flow. He's the definition of pushing things to the next level. If somebody wants to think about what flow is, just go YouTube Kobe Bryant scoring 81 points and see that he has no reaction. He doesn't pump his fist. He doesn't really dap his teammates up. There's no extra. There's no trash talk. But this guy's scoring 56 points in one half of a game. That's it. That's, to me, the perfect depiction of flow. And then what you just described as far as consistently searching for excellence, that is what the Mamba mentality is. And that's what he really embodied. And when we hear stories can shift over time, because that's how we are as human beings. We make things sound better than what they may have been.
Right.
But you can hear Allen Iverson say, yeah, I worked out with Cole. And I said, Cole, where you going? He said, I'm going to the gym. He said, AI, where you going? Oh, I'm going to the club. It showed in the ending of their careers. It showed when things did shift, because there was a time when I was 10 years old. Yeah, AI and Kobe were right here. And then you saw Kobe just, because the compound interest of consistently working on things. And there's something I saw on your site that really stood out to me, and I want to ask you about this. Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Talk to me about your experience reading that book.
Man, no, that book, man, that was a really good book. That was a really good book. You got to understand too, like, when I read that book, it kind of also, not only did it bring me into this idea, like, it brought me to the ties of things that I hear. So what happens is, like, I throw information in my head, and oftentimes I don't even process it, but then it recalls at certain moments, and it's really been a gift. But when I kind of heard that book, it was like, some people want to think that people that are successful are trying to rush things or trying to move through things fast, and they're just trying to think and then put on paper. But really, it's like they're trying to move slow, but they're trying to move correctly. And correctly is not wasting time. Correctly is moving in a path where it may take a few years, it may take longer than you expect, but it's moving in a strategic manner. And thinking is a similar pattern. And what you have to understand too about the mind is that the mind is the concept of neuroplasticity. It can be rewired. It can be transformed. And I posted something earlier today about it. I was like, the subconscious doesn't disassociate the real from the unreal, right? What you put in your head can be reality if you believe it to be your reality. Like, I've posted something about this too, where it was just like, people sometimes ask me, like, why you walk with so much confidence? Like, why you, like, moving your shoulders? Like, what is it? I'm like, man, if you understood the conversations that I've had with myself, the conversations and what I believe myself to have, like, it's like, I'm not overhyping anything, but I'm like, man, I am proud of the person I became, and proud of the person that I'm willing to be, right, by putting in the work. And so for me, it's like, there's a certain level of pride that I have in that. And so transitioning to, it's like, there's a certain level when it comes to thinking that sometimes people don't always understand. And it's that while your mind is incredibly important and derives all these thoughts, you aren't your mind. Your mind is an aspect of who you are. Because that's a big one. We're gonna see your opinion in a sec. But I've read the philosophers, and I've read, you are your conscious. Your conscious is your being. And that's a strong argument. And to say that's not the case is a big argument on my part too. But then you have to understand too, is the mind always what you think it is? Or is it sometimes believing in false narratives? Are you creating false narratives, right? What is emotions? Your emotions is your body's response to whatever the mind's thinking. That's why there's an imbalance. Oh, yeah. That's a big thing, right? And so you have to understand too, like, is your mind a tool? The rational mind is a tool. You're using it as a resource, as part of your being, right? Is your being spirituality? Is that why sometimes the mind overthinks some things, but your gut is right, right? Whether you think it's gut, intuition, God, I don't care what you think it is. Usually it's right. Why is that? And why isn't the mind right? Or what doesn't the mind know these things? Why is it some people can control the mind? Why is it people turn flow and flow off like it's a light switch? So you got to ask yourself, you got to really ask yourself, do you know yourself? Do you know who you are, what you're capable of? Are you able to visualize certain things? What is it that connects you to your visualization, to your spirit? Like, for a quick example, before I get your take on this, because I know you got a take on this, is that for me, the gym's huge, right? In the gym, I have some times in between sets when I'm lifting heavy, but man, there's times where I can zone out the music in the middle of a set. And this is how I picture. This is exactly what happens through my head. My eyes close and I imagine a big eye in front of me opening. And through that, I can visualize what I want and what is best for me for the next 5 years. Right? I see myself walking in certain areas. I see myself in certain ways. I see what I'm wearing. I see the plans that I'm making. I see the names of the brands or the companies that I want to start. I see me talking to the people. I see the impacts that I make. And then I open my eyes and I'm like, that's why I do it. I'm here. I'm working. I'm consistent because that's who I am.
Oh man, you hit on so many points, man. I think thinking fast and slow to that piece of how the mind, how we think, just there's so many different parts. Like the example of system 1 and system 2, and how we have a systematic way of processing information, where he uses the example of, okay, it's a married couple, they get divorced after 20 years, but going forward, they only think about year 20. That was the worst of the 20 years. That's how people think. Well, now this person is the scum of the earth because in year 20, everything went wrong. When the cycle of life is 95% of the time, things went right. So if you only focus on that 5%, then that 5% becomes your 100%. That becomes the illusion, the reality of your illusion, or the illusion of your reality, whichever one you want to place it as. So that's huge. You're talking about visualization, and that's something that I need to work on better. Right? The idea of meditation, that's something I have to do better. And I have to literally not let the moments of life steer me away from, you have to stay grounded in that visualization and meditation, because we have to see it. But then when you talked about the subconscious, I don't know if you've read this book, but this book right here changed me. The Untethered Soul. And the Untethered Soul talks about, you are not your mind. You are the being experiencing your mind. And Tim, that's such a humbling realization. Like, wait a minute. That's why some men struggle with women. Dude, you're not, you've already processed that she's not looking at you, but you don't even know that. If you just can pick up on subtle cues. I was in college, man. I used to get in my feelings about this. I'd be like, man, this girl was just texting me, or she just was DMing me. And then when she walked past me, she puts her head down. Like, she can't make eye contact with me. Like, what's going on with her? 10 years later, I know that and this is for all the men out here who listen, this is Gentleman's Atlas. I'm going to give y'all a tip. When a woman walks past you, there's 3 things she does. One thing she does is she may look at you and she look down. If she looks down, that means she's intimidated and extremely attracted to you. If she looks sideways, that means she's attracted to you. She kind of wants you to see, but she just kind of like, she's not. It's kind of it's like in the middle. The third thing is that she'll look at you and then she'll look up. When she looks up, she has no interest. Pay attention. Pay attention to the women when you're at the gym. Pay attention to these small things. Those 3 signs, those 3 simple signs right there. She'll look down if she's really intimidated and really attracted to you. She's going to look to the side if she's just kind of like on the fence. She's going to like, I don't know. should look up. Now, obviously, everything's not an absolute, but those are three subtle
Those are
cues.
signs, right?
Those are three subtle cues. And when I think about that situation and I reference it to the way we think, so me at 19, 20, 21, I'm like, all the bad just pops into the brain. Oh, well, something must be wrong with what I'm wearing, or this and this and that. No, they were intimidated. They actually did like me. They didn't know what to say. Oh, she's thinking just as much as I'm thinking. And I think here's something that we haven't really talked about. We didn't really talk about the Will situation, right? There was a clip from 2020. He's on, I think, Breakfast Club. They were pushing Bad Boys 3. Yeah, they were pushing Bad Boys 3. And he says, success is a lonely, dark, scary, evil place. Nobody is going to come with you there. Nobody's going to be there for you to have those conversations with yourself. Nobody's going to be there. And the reality is, most people don't want to go to that place. That can be a very scary, especially as a man. You're talking about being vulnerable. You're talking with somebody, I've been homeless. I've had moments where I literally had no money. I'll never forget a situation. I was dating a woman. I had gotten fired. I was getting paid $50 to go interview some people. I needed the money. I left. She got mad. She put my stuff next to a trash can. A couple days later, she called me a bum. She called me a bum because I didn't have anything. But I had to. How could I not have any money and then say no to money, even if it's only $50? Well, I need that. But to go to a place where I have to face those moments in my brain, and I also have to be like, I can't hold any resentment towards her. I can't say that every woman is going to be like that. That's a scary feeling. That's an eerie feeling. That's a reality that happens. So as men, I think you mentioned something earlier too, that lone wolf mentality that comes over us all. That's why it's so important to have your group of men and understand that everybody's not going to be a part of it. You could be within a group of 30, but you might only have 2 or 3 men in that group that are actually your men, that you could actually pull your mask down and have that conversation. That's why my brother, my best friend, I call him my brother because that's really my brother. That's my best friend. That's why I could say to him, hey, Cam's not wrong. What are you saying? And it's love. Because at the end of the day, your perspective is your perspective. My perspective is my perspective. That doesn't mean one of us is evil. Doesn't mean one of us is wrong. It just means as men, we can own our perspective, and actually having that conversation in front of people or in front of a person where you can have that dialect and just come away and think, had a conversation with one of my big bros recently about a past relationship. And he said, you got to think about it. She comes from a family. She's the type of woman who people want to be friends with. And I said, oh, wow. I never thought about it that way. I'm just thinking from my introverted, selfish way of like, I don't got to be around people all the time. When I need to be in front of people, I'm around people. But let's keep it intimate to us. But no, that's the type of woman she is. She's the type of woman who's, no matter what, people are going to want to be around her. But when you have men specifically, not males, not boys, men who understand what that means, you could have those conversations. You could look at things from a different perspective. And then it's up to you. It's like it's up to me as a man to make the decisions that will ultimately decide how things are going to go from there.
No, that's all good stuff. It's all things that, like, like I said, it's a lot about perspective. And it's a lot about putting things into perspective to start out with. So there's two relationships that I want to bring up to you. So the first is like, again, like you said with your brother. And hold up, like I didn't even know Steph's your brother, right?
Hey man, that's
Stefan Speaks manager, right?
Yeah, man, that's
I had no idea. I interviewed Stefan in Charlotte, right? So like we coordinated, like their flight got delayed late at night. And then after, I was like, yeah, because we were talking about the event. And then I was talking about like, yeah, like I'm really trying to interview some of these people because like, I was like, man, I was inspired by them. I like their story. I'd like to bring it up. And I mentioned your name. He's like, he's my brother. I was like, he's your brother? I guess your brother? I was like, where did that come from? I was like, oh man, that was really funny. But I could definitely see it. I was like, that was cool to see. But what I was going to go into is first with my father, right? So for me, as I kind of grew older, what happened was my father realized, and props to this in the beginning, that he could start learning from me because I was discovering things that he doesn't even know about. And so what our relationship became was like, there was always the respect. Like he was proud of who I was as a son, right? And I was always grateful and proud and happy and thankful for everything that he did and the sacrifices that he made. But our conversations became very authentic. Like we were breaking things down the way we saw them. And at the end of the day, it'd be like, shake hands, like it's good to see you, good to catch up with you. Thank you for everything once again. But the conversation itself wasn't, trying to butter like this judgment. Like, no, if I saw something, I called it as it see it. And he did the same for me. So for me, that was a big part of, again, like you got to be able to have those people you can be authentic with. And another one I wanted to bring up is back to this relationship. So in my prior years, for me, before I was kind of pursuing my own things, I'd spend a lot of time going out, man. I'd spend a lot of, time setting up dates and, going back and forth with different women. And, I see why some people like it. And honestly, like, if that's you, do you. But to be honest, I was single for a while because that's when I really started working on myself. And I told myself, I'm like, I'm not going to get into relationships. I'm trying to build myself. I'm trying to create something and I need all focus on me. I can't have these distractions right now. And that was a good time to meet someone that at the time was one of my best friends. And I found a very feminine like energy in her that brought me to a connection. And so we tried something out and it turned out to be the greatest relationship I've been in to date. And so we ended just due to some she was going through some personal stuff that she needed to get through kind of on her own thing. Cause she was still kind of going through that and, different scenarios of like location and stuff like that. But what I got from that was like, you can argue that being with one person's the right way. You can argue being with multiple women's the right way if you're a successful man. I don't care. But for me personally, like I got peace, right? Because I wasn't worried about scheduling this stuff with a woman. I wasn't worried about managing different women, right? Because at the end of the day, like it's, you got to give in a relationship. And if you're in multiple relationships with people that maybe aren't the best for you, right? You're giving pieces to others. And at the end of the day, sure, maybe you have your fun. Maybe you're partying. You're bringing girls on to like a yacht. I don't care how much money you have. You're going to look back in 5 years and then you're like, where's the empire that I built in those relationships? Right? There's no merit in short-term relationships other than pleasure. Right?
Ooh.
There's no merits.
Ooh, see, but here's the thing, right?
So go ahead.
I've done some research on the effectiveness of relationships and from a women's aspect in this way. And there are a lot that the first 2 to 3 years of relationship for the most part are the best. A lot of research,
right?
Exactly, those first 2 to 3 years. So when you say merit in a short-term relationship, there's so many things that come to my mind. First thing is this. So behind me, I have this "Why Do Fools Fall in Love" cassette. Frankie Lyman. He's an artist from the 40s in Harlem. But the movie was great. It was profound. He was married 3 separate times in the movie, 3 different women, and he essentially was 3 different Frankies. Like he was the rock star singer, he was the hustler on the street, he was the countryman that was in the military, and 3 different versions of himself with these women in like literally within a 5-year period. I bring that up and use that in this example to say this, right? What gets scary about our current era is, 60 years ago, you can meet a girl. And I'm saying a girl because from that young aspect, but you meet a woman, she's the one. You're not together as a man right now. Let me go get myself together. She's not going to find another man. In this era, they don't wait.
Someone else.
They don't wait.
And maybe you do too,
And maybe you do too. But here's the difference too. Even back then, a man might find someone else who can work around where he is right then and there, but she's not the one that's waiting for him. And I think about The Alchemist, right? Santiago and Fatima. So I say that to say the value that can come from a short-term relationship is not a legacy building value. It might be a friend. I know so many people who I've never mastered the art of, oh, yeah, we were madly in love at some point and now we're friends. I've never mastered that art because to me, it's how can I be friends with somebody I was madly in love with? How do you think my ego is huge. So when I'm looking at you, I'm not going to look at you and say, you're my friend. I'm going to look at you and say, I remember when you used to call me daddy. Bottom line.
Past lover, right?
That's what bottom line. So you can switch and people change and things of that nature. But there are situations where you have that connection, share that connection, and maybe it was the wrong time, wrong place, and there's still some type of union. There's still some type of business that could come from that. There's still some type of a joy of the friendship and what you can learn about yourself in those situations. That's where I'm like, because at the end of the day, I think about this movie when I was in, and I've opened up a little bit about my background, but when I was in college, I had like a long-term high school, college relationship. But I remember this movie, it's a Tyler Perry movie, something about Temptations, right? So they're like small town, husband and wife. Husband is on the come up. Wife is very faithful, but she meets a super rich dude, right? Super rich dude is aggressive, never stops. The moment that something goes wrong, she ends up going with the super rich dude, right? And I just think about those type of situations because her curiosity was always going to be there because she was only with that one. Even though they were supposed to be together and they end up not being together at the end of the movie. That factor to me is why sometimes it might be more appropriate to express yourself in that way. Because the science says biologically, women want sex more than men.
Yeah.
They want sex more than men. And when you really think about it, even if you think about it from a biblical aspect, right?
That's crazy too. I'm
like, yo, first of all, why did Adam was on, they call it a shit test. That was the first, and I apologize if I was supposed to say that on your show.
No, you're good, man.
That's what they call women give us, right, as men. When Eve said, yo, let's try this fruit, that was the first one. He failed to her influence. And to me, it's mind-boggling because I'm like, wait, how could we? It was the beginning. But it just goes to show who we are as beings, right? So when I think about it from that aspect, to say there's no value and no merit, there was once a time when I felt that way. But people are different. And whether they have grown up in a culture, turned off just certain layers of their skin, not actual physical skin, but the skin of their mind, the skin of their emotions, it's possible. So and the reality of it is, in a short-term relationship, it doesn't mean you always have to be intimate either. And I think that's where things can get blurry, right? Imagine a world where so she dated 7 guys, but she dated 7 guys for 7 months, but they never got close. They never had sex. That just means she has 7 different perspectives of life. That actually means she has good experience because now if you were to join as one and become a union of marriage, then things are going to, she'll be able to understand different aspects of you as a man too. And that's why I'm like, So talk to me. I see you processing. I hit on a few different points. Talk to me on that piece of not having merit to the legacy when it comes to that. Because I think a part of I used to party.
Yeah. Okay.
Hard. That's why when somebody asks me, do you drink? I said, I drink enough. I drink enough. I've been to Vegas. I've been to Vegas with Future and Bron and Floyd. I've had fun.
Right.
That is the reason why I moved that way. But talk to me. Tell me more about that. I want to see it comes out. I told you. Maybe it's the Aquarius. That's my excuse.
All right. We'll go with that. I think, and I stand by what I said, but I also think what I said was incomplete to the way I brought it to you. So what I want to say is that I don't see the merit in seeking it for pleasure's sake. If you're seeking it for just pleasure, for the dopamine rush, because you're just giving into this vice, if that's what it became for you, I don't see the merit in that. However, most of my relationships were short. This one was a bit longer, one of my longest ones. And in the short ones, I saw merit because the reason I got into them was I liked them enough. But what I knew is that the experience I would gain would better prepare me for future relationships and make me a better man in those relationships, understand how to meet the needs of the woman that I cared for. So what happened? I was in that, like, I mean, I don't remember how many relationships I've been in, but in those past ones, I learned things. Okay, she's reacting this way. Okay, she says, I'm feeling this way. She's feeling that way, right? She likes this gift. Even if that's not her love language, I know that this makes her feel good. I know this makes her think of me, right? So I pick up on the little details. Oh, I'm gonna leave her after the date night with my jacket, spray a little cologne. I know that scent reminds me of her, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, the game that I was getting was like, it was good for me, but at the same time, it made the experience better for them, right? So like, even after a relationship, I'd be like, listen, talk to me. I want you to break it down. What you not like, what you like. And I'd take that, and the next woman would benefit from that. So what happened? One, the relationships got better. But two, I also became more selective because I knew what I had to offer. Because like I said, like, if I'm right now, I'm still growing, but like, I'm ambitious, I'm driven, I'm going through my things. But if you, my woman, if we're in this connection together, I'm taking care of you too. Like, I know how to make you a breakfast in bed. I know how to give you a good back massage. Like, I know all these different things that you won't see on the surface, and you earn that by getting into a connection with me. I'm not going to tell you that I know how to do that. I'm not going to tell you that I can dance salsa like nobody's business. You know what I'm saying? Like, for me, it's a layer beneath it. So when I say there's no merit in the short term, there's no merit in if you're seeking pleasure and that's your vice, right? Like, you can do that, but there isn't a merit in terms of building something in a legacy sense, and also building something to learn from a new perspective and gain insights. And so with the long relationships, again, if you're building a long relationship with a partner, you know that there is merit in the legacy in that sense. But again, too, you have to have perspectives, because if you're going to be with someone and their what if is always going to be greater than their love for you, that's a big problem. That is a huge problem. If their what if and what if could have been is a huge problem. And that's a big thing why there's scientific research behind that idea of marrying within your level per se, right? Like, you know, like whatever you're 1 to 10, whatever it is, you got to marry within like a 2 plus or minus. Why? Because the one that's lower more than that will always think, do I deserve this person, and question their ability to remain good enough in this relationship. And the person at the top at some point will think, maybe I could have done better. And if they live with regret, they might try to pursue something different. So back to this point. And I'm glad you brought that up in terms of like, there's no merit in something short, because again, that was unfinished. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. Whether or not you agree with what I just said, I needed to say that because that needed to complete with my idea. And that's the entire point. Have conversations like this. Be accountable. Hold each other accountable. You need to be able to be open and let the ideas inspire you, right? Look at, I took no personal offense to what he just said to me. And now he just learned something new about me that could help him because he said those things. So again, there's nothing wrong in confrontation. The only thing that you keep is respect. The only thing that you keep is letting each other talk. That's why it's key. You listen to understand, not to respond, right? I understood what he said because it had merit. And that's where the idea comes from, the what ifs and that stuff, because that's important to know. And it's also important to know what you like. Back to this relationship talk. You got to know what you enjoy. At the middle of my relationships, then just going out, I thought I wanted an ambitious partner, someone that was driven like me. I wanted someone with goals. But then I realized there's a conflict of interest, because what happens when someone's goals come at the sacrifice of the others? What if they want to be a doctor and I'm trying to do a business? I want to be in New York. They want to be in San Francisco. What happens then? Are they sacrificing or am I? And I am not sure as hell about a sacrifice right now, because this is everything to me, right? And maybe they do sacrifice. Maybe they say, you know what, I'll put it to the side. But then they are in denial of their own emotions and their own spirit and their own drive, because they were never really able to conform to you. They coexisted with you, and you lied to yourself and to each other. And that's where it's important to be honest about what you want if you are building a long-term relationship. And that's also the difference. You have to understand what kind of relationship you're looking to build. Are you looking to just gain experience, be in the company of each other, and learn from a new perspective, in which case the short-term works, in that sense, and you don't have to see those long-term values, right? And that's where the opposites and the polarities attract, because that's that initial attraction. But if you're looking for something long-term, past that polarity, like you said, there's that honeymoon phase, you need similar values and similar drive. One, religion's a huge one. You need to talk about that. Are you a Christian and she's an atheist? How are you going to raise your kids if you want kids with her, right? Because in a Christian household that's very big on Christianity, that kid's praying at night. That kid's saying grace at the dinner table. That kid's going to church every Sunday. That's a value system. And if the other person isn't willing to do that, they're like, no, why would they pray to that? You got to ask yourself these things, because long term, where are the values aligning? A big one that a lot of people don't have for some reason is, do you want kids? Imagine marrying someone and 5 years later, you're like, all right, let's have kids. Like, no, I don't want kids. Like, you missed that for 5 years. That's not on them. That is on you being ignorant because you chose to keep ignorant. And so again, like I said, I think honestly it's key for a lot of people, especially when you're younger, when you're figuring yourself out, to understand what's important to you, right? Because once you understand what's important to you and what you value in a partner, those relationships get better. And at the same time, you also understand what value you are providing to a partner. And are they willing to accept that value? And is that the kind of value they want? Because what that did for me is that relationship that I was telling you about far superseded any of my past relationships. Furthermore, it was someone that understood my ambition and drive. And when I said I couldn't text her that day or the next day, she said, you get what you need to get done. I am proud that you're working on yourself. You text me when you have that time. That to me is blissful. That is peace. Right. But then the moments, because to be honest, for an ambitious person, their most valuable thing that they can give to a woman is their time. Their time is everything. Right. So when I did give that time to her, man, we would spend it every single second in the best moments. And what'd that do? It wasn't a distraction. It was a period for me to approach things from a different perspective, engrossed in a feminine essence with a cool person while I'm a hot-natured person. I refreshed, I recovered, and when I came back, I was ready to hammer it from a different angle. And often she got me through those blocks where I didn't know what to do next in my personal journey, because it was that different essence. And that's the power of a good relationship. And it wasn't because I sought it out, but it was because it found me in a place that needed to be found while I was working on myself. I put my priorities straight, and that came across. Here's the thing. It's about, you don't seek this out. You're just open to it. Don't close yourself off from opportunities and experiences and possible relationships, whether they're romantic or friendships, but you have to be able to pursue what's meaningful to you at the same time and make that your number one.
Definitely have to make it your number one. And what comes to mind as you're wrapping up is a song off of Travis Scott's first album with The Weeknd. It says, "Don't pray for love." And I've said this to women. Spirituality is always, there's certain conversations. If I see a woman as a potential connection that I want to grow with, we're going to have these conversations quick. Like I need to, you have to know that I'm a philosopher at heart. You have to know that my muscles might be big, but my brain is bigger. You have to know that. So I'm going to that space immediately. But I've had that conversation with myself. I don't pray for love. I don't pray for love, because to me that goes against what love is. If love is something that's this emotional connection that develops for a person that you really, it's not
should be natural.
Exactly. It's not something that you can control.
Yeah. Like, especially when you pray from a certain person. Like, you're like, I wish this person loved me. I'm praying that you love me. Like,
I know. It's not what we pray for. No. I pray that I'm, like you said, I pray that I'm open. You pray that I'm open to receive what's supposed to come. But I think at the same time, guided. I've dealt with situations where I'm getting to a point now where I have to let go of the idea of a plan. Because when I put this plan in my brain, in my relationship, I can say, okay, if I'm going to actually get in a relationship with you and be like Facebook official, you my girlfriend, that means I see you being my wife. But when I was operating out of a system of, well, she's supposed to be my wife, dealing with my own childhood traumas, when she doesn't crack up to what I envision as my wife, my interest decreases. Now what taps in is my own value. It taps into, this is what the line I was talking about earlier is, To me, this is not narcissistic. This is reality. At least I own that as my reality. How I bring nothing to the table when I'm the table. So when I analyze things and I'm like, okay, I don't like the sheep. Nope, 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 nope. But now to move forward and say, hey, May, have a conversation with yourself and release the idea of putting that pressure on yourself and just be. And just be. Operate at your highest frequency. Work on yourself is what you're talking about. Anybody, if you go to the gym consistently, that means you're dedicated to working on yourself. If you're consistently dedicated to reading or podcasts, or I think a huge element that never goes out of style and is the highest level of currency, which I learned from my big brother, is relationship equity. Relationship equity means I have a network of people, of entrepreneurs, men and women, in all different industries that I can connect with. And like Napoleon Hill says, create the, why am I losing the word right now? You know what I'm talking about. Mastermind groups.
Mastermind, yeah.
That's part of if you're operating on the systems of doing those things, that compound interest is going to play at some point. And I think one of the beauties of life, when you tap all that together, you put everything in the pot, you have the law of attraction is going to derive. That's going to be the product of everything that you're putting into the pot. And with that law of attraction, you're going to find what you're looking for. But understand, as you're finding what you're looking for, the mind and everything that's been drilled into you is also going to come out too. And what's really important, I know we're going to be wrapping up soon. One of the things you talked about in regards to relationships, it hurts me a bit because I feel like as a public, we know too much about their marriage. But I think about Will and Jada, because what I've seen, that's why I used to have a resentment towards Jada and her interactions with Will. And then I read the book. So when the Oscar situation happened, I said, Jada probably didn't want him to do that. Based off of what I read in his book, it all makes sense. Like him going on stage, him making his speech, him laughing and having a good time after, everything that a quote unquote Jada said afterward, it all makes sense. She said, this is why it's important when I think of the way as superior man, choose first. So for the men out here listening, choose a woman that chooses you. Jada didn't want to have a big wedding. She didn't want to have a conventional marriage. She said, hey, her mother begged her to get married. So I don't want to live this way. She didn't want to be the biggest star in Hollywood. Will did. His own children. There's parts of the book where Willow talks about one day she comes down in the morning and she says, Mommy, I feel so sad for Daddy because I know he loves us, but we're not the family that he wants. Based on his childhood experiences, he wants to develop what's perfect. That's why he tries so hard to keep things together, even though it may not make sense. She may not be the one for you, bro. But he as a man, we witnessed part of the results of what he's going through, and hopefully he's going through whatever that next phase of his next 10 years, because that's how long the ban is, whatever that next phase is for him as a man, because he has someone like myself and others who look at him like, no matter what, you're a hero for what you've done and what you represent as your accomplishments and your dedication to that self-improvement. But it's a prime example of when you're talking about actually, when it comes to that marriage piece, from those who are seeking that long-lasting connection, all those things matter. How, if I don't like dogs and you don't like cats, but I have a cat and you have a dog, how are we going to work this out? Someone say, well, that's a small thing, but is it small?
It all starts in the small things. What happens when there's 20 small things that just don't work out? You're a vegan and I love to go to steakhouses every weekend? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like sometimes the small things aren't a deal breaker, but they're a sign that you have to look deeper. And it's like, here's one thing. Emotions are important, and you have to understand your own emotions. You have to label them. You have to put them where they need to go. But you cannot let a temporary feeling control a permanent decision. You've got to be able to open yourself. You have to be able to open yourself. And love is the most strong emotion. It's the strongest emotion there is. And beneath love, there's also a sense of connection. So that exists a little separately, in my opinion. But when you're talking about love, you have to really be able to be honest and be transparent and not let it consume what you're thinking, right? Because that's what happens too with a lot of people, is if they're not strong enough in terms of like their structures that they've built in their lives and that dedication to continuing in that structure, breakups is a big example of what happens because you end, but you still have that love and the emotion overpowers your ability to see why the situation ended and also what comes out of the situation. Like for me, I've always, ever since I started in my journey of self-improvement, everything I saw as a gift to me. And that's in essence what Stoics also see, is that I'm not in control of what happens out there. I'm in control of my mind, of what happens to me, right? But it's this idea that the obstacle can be the way. There's always something good, even if it's bad. It's an experience to be learned. It's a character building day. I don't care what I call it. For me, there's always good to be had. And so when I look at stuff like this, I'm like, you have to build from positivity, because there's a fine line that people sometimes walk, because when you're recovering or when you're building from some of these things, some people think they're being positive or growing in a healthy light, but they're shunning out how they're feeling. They're calling themselves weak. They're calling themselves vulnerable, and they're not able to grow. And a big thing, and I mentioned this before on different podcast interviews and just episodes, is that the biggest one is the gym. The girl breaks his heart and he goes to the gym. He works on his physique. 2 years, he's jacked. Listen, that's great in that attribute, but what happens is he never developed the mind aspect. He never had those conversations with themselves or with his peers or the people that actually cared about his well-being. So then what happens when, after all this time of working out and saying screw women, he meets a woman who's genuinely good and wants to help him, but he poisons the relationship because he carries that trauma that's undealt with. And unfortunately, a lot of us carry undealt trauma, or trauma that we haven't dealt with. It's undealt with. And whether it comes from, there's so many things trauma can come from, but you have to understand, you have to let it go by taking control of the situation. You can't let it have power over you anymore. You got to look yourself in the mirror and say, today's the day that I stop letting this have control over me. It may be a part of me. It may be something that makes me into who I am today, but no longer am I going to let that pain happen again. Because if you do, like Seneca said, there's two pains that happen to you: the pain of when it happened and the pain of holding on. Because you will relive it and you will re-experience it because you have not accepted it as your reality. But the reality is, it's your past. And your past is no longer your concern. What you can do is learn from the past. What you can do is gather information from the past. What you can do is you can look at the past as a measure of where you are today by what you did before and what experiences led you to what you think today. Right? You don't neglect the past. You don't shun the past. You don't look down upon the past, but you look at it as the biggest lesson in life to learn from.
Man, I love the way you stated that, and it's 100%. And the only thing I would add on to that is, like we're referenced the Way of Superior Man again. There is no finish line, and that's said in the Way of Superior Man. That's said in "You Can't Hurt Me" by David Goggins. Shout out to my hometown Buffalo. There is no finish line. As men, at the end of the day, no matter what your purpose is, whatever your goal is, a foundational piece for us all as men is that we are leaders. We lead ourselves first, and we'll lead our families. Okay, you want to start a family? That means you have to lead that family. You don't want to have any children? Okay, you still have to be a leader within the family that you're in. That might mean you're going to lead more as a son, lead more as a brother, lead more as an uncle. It's a lot of people like that, right? Uncles change people's lives. My uncle changed my life. I got uncles who changed my life. And understanding with all that you just mentioned, right? Yo, it's not a one-time conversation in the mirror. It's every day.
Every day.
It's every day. I got a book that you'll enjoy just based on the conversation that was Winning by Tim Grover.
Okay.
And Tim Grover he's the one who trained Michael Jordan, Kobe, but he goes deep into what it's very stoic. It's like an athletic stoic's tale.
Okay.
And that's it. It's every day. It doesn't stop. You said earlier in the show, man, we love to see what we've achieved. Yes, because we're not going to sit and look. Shaq talks about it before. He says, hey, when I won my championships, I looked at it for a day, and then I put it away. I threw it away. And so on to the next thing. You could see Shaq as his post-athletic life. Yeah, Shaq be in a lot of commercials. Shaq is in commercials and he's DJing in Europe. But the point is that you don't have to be Shaq. You're the Shaq of your own life. You are the Diesel.
You're the hero of your own story.
Exactly. So, yeah, man.
Yeah, man, that's huge.
What's the last question you got for me? Hit me with something that send me off. I want to give you a huge thank you for having me on this. I enjoyed this conversation, learned something about you, Isaac. Isaac is a wonderful and powerful name because I think about it from a biblical aspect in general and understanding the leader, the father, the foundational piece that Isaac was in the Bible. Yeah, it's no coincidence. So hit me.
Let's do this. Let's give them social media handles. Let's tell them where to find you, and then we'll wrap it off with a good one. So where can people find you at?
Man, you can find me on Instagram at Sir Amazing, but you got to make sure you spell it the right way. That's AIMEZING. Sir Amazing on Instagram is the best way to connect and follow me and follow the journey and be a part of the community that we're growing. SirAmazing.com is where you can find a little bit more information on my bio, background, XYZ. By the time this is dropping, I have a Instagram marketing company where I help businesses grow specifically through Instagram. I'm going to be presenting to how to build a brand to a specific school program, to high school students, so that they kind of have these tools, because the reality is social media is not going away. And Instagram is something that's only gotten stronger over the years. And it's good to have just an idea and etiquette of how we can monetize and maximize our experiences while we're getting those dopamine hits, seeing all these beautiful women. But that's where you can find me.
That's great. So before I ask the question, I want to mention everyone listening to this podcast. One, we'll start with a gratitude, because I'm incredibly grateful for your time, for you being here, for your energy and everything that you're providing, not only on this podcast, but into the world. And I also want to mention something else. When you surround yourself with people like Sir Amazing, and people not like Sir Amazing, but people who are authentic, who are pursuing their best versions of themselves each and every day, what happens is, when you're also pursuing the best version of yourself, there's an energy unlike any other. Because everything I have said today, I haven't even filtered for a second. This comes straight from the heart. This is exactly what I'm feeling, and this is raw, this is pure. And to be honest, I'm going to say for probably 80% of this conversation, I felt like a flow state, man. I look at the time and I'm just like, it's been that long already, for the reason that, all I've wanted to do is gather what you had to say what I had to say, and then listen to what you had to say about what I had to say, and then hear your inputs and your transitions and what you want to talk about. Why? Because there's so much to learn from people that aren't you. There's so much to learn from people that are different than who you are. And when you open those ears, man, magical things happen. Why? Because you connect the dots. Because sometimes the missing links and the missing pieces are not in your domain, but they exist in someone else's. They exist in the reality and the space of someone else. And again, like we've said, you got to be open. You got to be able to experience and welcome new perspectives into your own life. And so again, with this conversation, it's been an absolute pleasure, because all I've felt is listening to a perspective that's different yet similar to mine. And what that does is provide insight, provides perspective, and provides ideas. So my last question for you is, we're going to do a little scenario. 25-year-old male. Okay. He's had trauma in his childhood. He's had bad experiences in past relationships. He's angry at the world. He thinks it's not his responsibility to demand better from himself. What book are you recommending to him, and why are you recommending it to him?
Ooh. See, my answer was like, he's got to read these 5 books. My first thought was he's got to find his book. But I'm going to give him 5. He's going to read them all. And from one of those 5 books, he's going to apply the necessary steps to take his life to the next level. So the first one, and I'm going to look around a little bit. So the first book I'm going to mention, this isn't the whole collection, but one book I'm going to mention is, I think every man should read The Truth About Men by Devon Franklin. It is, especially for, I think every man should read it. I believe every man should read it, but for Black men especially, our culture in the United States of America is unique in an aspect because to me, it really talks about the culture from how we view women, from hip hop to strip clubs. I live in Atlanta. Strip clubs are all over. Like, it's very common. It's not like that in every city, but to me, that's important from a sexual side of controlling yourself. Absolutely, you have to read The Way of Superior Man. The Way of Superior Man just gives a guideline. To me, it's like it's a version of a Bible. It just gives a guideline of how to operate and how to make your decisions and really own your purpose. Let's do a couple more. Third one, I'm going to say As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. It's a quick read, but as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And it just gives a breakdown of all these different ways in which our minds and how we view ourselves. That's the third one. Let's see, two more books that I would give to this man who's going through it. Really, I'm going to say, Be Obsessed or Be Average by Grant Cardone. And the whole message from that book is find the 3 things that you love to do. And then for those of you who are familiar with Grant Cardone, he has the 10X rule. Basically, you find those 3 things and then you 10X those 3 things. That's the approach. That's the whole mindset of finding those 3 things. And then number 5, like self-plug, right? Everyone Needs a Hero. Why Can't It Be You by Amen McKinney Jr.
You tell them, man.
But it's great to say my book, but I'm going to say if he hasn't reached the point where he can really, there's so many books I would say. I'm giving you more. The Child in You, I recommend that book, but I think the author is Stephanie Dahl, where it talks about the shadow child that we all deal with. And it has specific exercises to release that pain. And then I'm going to say The Alchemist as well, because everybody has a personal legend. All things are one. And then when you truly want something, all of the universe conspires and help you to achieve it. So those are 7 books that I would recommend to that 25-year-old young man. And what I would say is read all 7 and find the one that works for you. You know, if your aspirations are larger and bigger where you need to take in more information, that's fine. Continue the journey and read more. But find the book that resonates with you, that makes you question yourself enough to take things to the next level and then apply.
No, that's great, man. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything. And as a closing message, I'm going to say my personal one that I recommend, Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins. Seeing the struggles of somebody else, seeing the mentality they went through, and seeing the complete 180 that they did, man, it's the one that got me started on my own journey, and it's the one I'd recommend to every single man and woman to read. And the one for me that is my one book, Meditations, Marcus Aurelius, gems from a Roman emperor who was a Stoic, who led a country that was the greatest empire that some could argue in the history of mankind. But again, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, check them out, show them the love, show them the support, and I will catch you all on the next episode of the Gentleman's Atlas podcast.